Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our academic writing and research course. Today, we're going to be working on lesson 15, and we're going to be talking about writing concise titles and effective abstracts. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So when you start to read a research paper, when you first pick it up, what makes you want to read that paper? Or if you're searching online and you come across a paper, what makes you want to read it? Is it the title? Is it the abstract? Or is it something else? For me, I would say the title is the first thing that catches my attention. And then I usually want to read the abstract to get some indication as to whether or not I want to read the entire article. So I want you to think about what makes a title and an abstract effective or ineffective. And we're going to start with titles. So a good title should be informative, concise, and specific. It should give the reader some indication as to what the paper is going to be about. You want to get the reader's attention so they'll read the abstract and then hopefully read the entire article. Your title might include the topic, the method, the population, the context of the study, and in some cases, you might give some hints about the result. You're not going to give away the result in the title, but you will usually give some hint. So let's take a look at a weak example of a title. A study of education in Ethiopia. Now, this is very broad, very vague. I don't know what type of study. I don't know what aspect of education. It says in Ethiopia, but I'm unsure where in Ethiopia. Is it in an urban environment? Is it in a rural environment? Is it in an all-girl school? Is it in a wealthy private school? Is it in a low resource context? So there's so many questions that remain unanswered here. When I look at that improved title, I can see that a lot of those questions have been answered. It says teacher motivation and student performance in rural Ethiopian secondary schools, a mixed methods study. So right away, I can see what's being studied, what aspects of education, teacher motivation, and student performance. I can see that it's in a rural Ethiopian secondary school. And it says it's a mixed method study. Now, I don't know, but I'm going to guess since it says teacher motivation, student performance, there could be some qualitative element, like is there a correlation between teacher motivation and student performance? And then a qualitative element, like a semi-structured interview with students who are high performing and trying to understand what aspects of their teachers' lessons they find most useful and have the biggest impact on their performance. And we could also interview our teachers to find out how being so motivated impacts how they prepare and deliver their lessons. So I want you to look at the following titles, and you can pause the video, and then I want you to try to rewrite them to make them more academic. We've got 5 of them here. A Study of Health and Society, All About Social Media and Youth, Agriculture in Africa, Gender Issues in Education, and How Technology is Used in the Classroom. All of these titles are very vague, very broad. So we're going to want to revise them to be more specific. Now let's take a look at some suggested answers. Instead of a study of health and society, we could say, exploring community health perceptions and practices in southern Ethiopia, a qualitative study. All about social media and youth. I could say the impact of social media use on academic performance among Ethiopian university students, a quantitative analysis. Agriculture in Africa, very, very broad, so I'm going to need to narrow this dramatically here. The adoption of climate-smart agricultural practices among smallholder farmers in Oromia, Ethiopia. Gender issues in education, barriers to girls' secondary education in rural Tigray, perspectives of students, parents, and teachers. So right away, I can see that population, I see the context. Um, it gives me a lot more information than simply gender issues. How technology is used in the classroom, integrating digital tools into English language teaching. So, right there, we've narrowed it from just the classroom to the English language classroom in Ethiopian secondary schools. So, we've really narrowed that focus. And we're talking about teachers' perceptions and challenges. So, now let's go to writing an abstract. So writing an abstract is done after our research paper is complete. So we're going to want to write our research paper or dissertation first. And that's because our abstract actually serves as a summary of what we've written. Your abstract is going to be approximately 150 to 250 words. So you've got to put this in context. If you're writing a dissertation, your dissertation might be 150 pages. You've got to shorten that to 150 to 250 words. So you really need to be concise. Your abstract should be self-contained. That means the reader should not need to consult your paper to understand your abstract. You should not be referencing parts of your paper. Your reader should be able to understand the content of your paper by reading this abstract. You want to avoid citations in most cases, and there is an exception to that. We're going to talk about that in a moment. So we're writing this abstract, and I kind of hinted at this earlier. What's the purpose of this? Why do we write an abstract? Well, we want to know if we should read the entire paper, right? A paper might be 20 pages, 15, 20 pages if it's a journal article. It might be 150 pages if it's a dissertation. So we don't want to go through the entire paper if it's not something that's going to serve our research interests or our professional interests. An abstract's also useful after we've already read the paper because it can help us to go back and remember key components of what we read. And another very important aspect when we're writing our abstract, it makes our work searchable in online databases. Usually, after you've written your abstract, you're going to include a list of 10 keywords. Then those are all related to your study. So, what should a good abstract include? Well, we've already gone over this in our course when we've talked about OMRAD, the introduction, methods, results, and discussion. So an abstract should include the context or background of the study, the central questions or the statement of the problem, what's already known, the previous research. Now, remember, if you're writing a dissertation, your literature review might be 30 to 50 pages. So you're not going to be able to include the entirety of what's been studied on this topic in your abstract. You just want to highlight gaps in the literature. And remember, citations normally do not count towards this word limit. The significance of the study, the methods, the analysis, and the findings, the results, and the conclusions, and finally, the significance or implications of those findings. Now, I mentioned that your citations do not count toward the word count. Normally, if you're writing an abstract for a research article or you're writing an abstract for your dissertation, you're not going to include citations. If you are writing an abstract for a conference proposal, then you will include citations. You're only going to include what is necessary. If you're including an abstract for publication, then you're likely going to need to include citations. There are two types of abstracts that we're gonna address. One is less common, and that's a descriptive abstract. And the other is the type of abstract that you've probably read most frequently, and that's an informative abstract. So how are these two different? Well, there's a very important difference. Descriptive abstracts tell us what's in the research, but they don't talk about the results or the conclusion. Whereas informative abstracts are more complete. They do talk about the study's results and conclusions. And as I said, most of the abstracts that you've read are likely to be informative abstracts. So I'm going to let you pause our video and read through these two abstracts here. And I want you to tell me which one is descriptive and which one is informative and why. Okay, so after you've read this, if you look at this abstract on the right, it says this paper explores traditional birth practices among women in southern Ethiopia. It discusses cultural beliefs, practices, and the role of traditional birth attendants. The study considers how these practices intersect with modern healthcare systems and what implications this has for maternal health policy. The paper highlights key themes identified throughout interviews with community members and healthcare providers. This is descriptive. It does not hint at the results or the conclusion. Whereas if we look here on the left, we can see that the author says, results indicate that households use mobile banking. They're 60% more likely to have savings accounts and credit compared to those that do not use such services. And then the author addresses the conclusion and the implications or application of these findings. So I want you to go through this abstract. This is an informative abstract, and I want you to identify the 7 different elements that we see listed here on the right. So I want you to pause that video, and I want you to work through this on your own. I want you to highlight or jot down each of these 7 elements. So you can just get a piece of paper and number it 1 to 7, and then you can write down where that element of the abstract begins. Okay, so let's go over our answers here. We've got our context. The increasing use of social media by university students in Ethiopia has raised questions about its effect on academic performance. So we're given some background about the study there. Then the author says, while social media platforms offer opportunities for collaboration and information sharing, concerns remain about distraction and time management. So right there, that's the problem. Previous research in Western contexts suggests a mixed impact with both positive and negative academic outcomes reported. So there we're reporting what's already known about this problem. Now, again, when we go through our literature review, we're going to go over each one of these studies and what the author found. We're going to exhaust the literature on this topic if we're writing a dissertation. But here we're just writing a summary. So we're just saying that studies show that there's been a mixed impact and it's been done in a Western context. However, little is known about these effects within the Ethiopian higher education context. So there's a gap, and that's why our study is significant. This study surveyed 800 undergraduate students from 3 public universities in Ethiopia and conducted follow-up interviews with 30 participants. We used regression analysis to explore the relationship between time spent on social media and academic performance as measured by GPA. There's your methods and your data analysis. The results indicate, so right there we know we're going to be talking about results, that moderate use of educational social media content is associated with slightly higher GPA, while excessive use of non-academic content correlates with lower GPA. So there's our findings, our results, and conclusion. These findings suggest that targeted use of social media for academic purposes could be integrated into university support services to promote better learning outcomes. That's a really well-written abstract, I think. And it ends with the significance of the implication of the study's findings. So I want you to take a look at this very, very brief Abstract. It's very brief, it's very weak. It says this paper talks about education and technology. Many students use the internet and it is changing the way people learn. The paper looks at some studies and gives some examples. In conclusion, technology is important for education and schools should use it more. Very, very brief, very vague. So we've got these elements here, these important elements, the abstract. I want you to go through and I want you to rewrite this. Okay, and I want you to use this information here. So pause the video, get out a sheet of paper or a Word document, and I want you to work through your own abstract using this information here. Okay, and your answer might look like this. As mobile technology becomes increasingly accessible in Ethiopia, concerns are growing about its impact on students' behavior, right? We've got our background right there. This study examines the relationship between smartphone use and the study habits of secondary school students in Addis Ababa. Well, earlier research from Western countries has produced mixed results showing both academic benefits and distraction associated with mobile devices. Little is known about these effects in the Ethiopian context. Okay, so I've got previous literature. I've got the significance of my work, how I'm filling this gap. Using a mixed methods approach, we surveyed 400 students from 5 secondary schools and conducted follow-up interviews with 20 teachers. So there's our methods. Results indicate that students use smartphones primarily for non-academic purposes, such as social media and gaming, tend to have reduced study time and lower focus during homework. In contrast, those who use their devices to access educational content, such as digital textbooks and study apps, showed modest improvements in test scores. So there are our results. The findings suggest, so right now, I know I'm moving towards the implications. The findings suggest that smartphone use in itself is not inherently harmful, but the purpose and content of use significantly shapes academic outcomes. This speaks to the need for educators and policymakers to develop guidelines and training to help students adopt more intentional and academically supportive mobile habits. So let's talk about some common mistakes that people make in their abstracts. The first is it's too vague, right? And we've gone over several examples of how we can fix that by providing a more detailed context to the study. There's no research method. And, I don't think we always need, in our title, we don't always need to include the method, but I think in our abstract, we absolutely do. We found interesting results using a study of 300 university students. So we want to tell what we did. There's no results, right? If we're writing an informative abstract, we want to address the results. Overuse of general terms, important, which is subjective, a lot. It helps a lot. Well, what does that mean? It improved access to course materials by 40%. That tells me how it helps a lot. There's no clear contribution. Instead of saying this paper is about education, this contributes to policies improving digital equity in rural schools. So I want you to look at these 5 sentences. You can pause the video, and I want you to think about how you could work to make each one of these sentences better. And now we'll check the results. Okay, so we could say instead of this paper discusses important issues in education, we could say this study examines the impact of limited digital access on student engagement in Ethiopian secondary schools. Instead of the results of the study are interesting and show that something is happening, we say survey results revealed a significant decline in study time among students who use social media for more than 3 hours daily. So that tells what's happening, that it says something is happening. That second sentence tells what. The research shows that technology affects students in both good and bad ways, so very subjective, non-specific vocabulary. Findings indicate that while educational apps improve test performance, non-academic smartphone use negatively impacted concentration and homework completion. Number 4, the results of the study revealed several findings. That's just repetitive. Results revealed findings. The study found that students with guided smartphone use strategies reported 20% higher academic motivation than those without guidance. So that tells what the study found. And finally, we used the survey and interview method to collect data from students and teachers. Okay, we need to indicate specifically that we're using mixed methods here and provide a little bit more context about who those people are and how many. Data were collected through a mixed methods design, including surveys from 400 secondary students and interviews with 20 teachers in Addis Ababa. So now that we've gotten some instruction on how we can write an effective abstract, I want you to write or to try to improve your own abstract. So remember, our abstract's a summary. So I want you to use something that you've already researched, or you can work on your current project if you feel that you're far enough along. And don't forget to include all of these 7 important key points that we discussed today. Okay, and we will come back in our next video for our skills lab on relative clauses. Thank you all so much for watching today, and I'll see you in our next video at the Language Arts Gallery.